Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is now the 14th of November. Hello Sam. Hello, good morning/afternoon. And good morning Alex. We'll see who else joins. Morning. It's a nice day with a cup of coffee. Spectacular sunrise today. Now, of course, you know how it is. The sunrise, you get all those bright colors, and then it kind of gets a little drab after that. We've got some clouds coming in, but that's actually what's made it really, really pretty. It was like all kinds of. First, it was like this vibrant reds, then it was pinks and purples, and then it was yellows. It was just like a really quite a light show this morning. But as we always know, it's a fleeting thing. It comes quickly, and then it kind of goes away. Yeah, yesterday was an interesting day for me. I had actually what I spent my entire morning doing after I did this and posted some stuff and answered some messages and made sure everybody in the ISFM had what they need for the night, need for the evening, and the other class I'm teaching on Saturdays, I wanted to make sure everybody had what they needed for that as well. So I had gone out and I had to blow leaves in my yard, okay, because it's funny, I really have like maybe one or two trees in my yard. The rest of them are all from surrounding property. So it took me I'd already made some progress on it. I mean, I'd already done the whole front, and I had to do the rest of my yard all the way to the back to the woods. And it was like, it took 2 hours. And my arms are tired. I guess that's why I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I've tired arms this morning. So, yeah. So, in any case, I was doing that yesterday. Today is my day that I get my hair done. I know I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I don't know, my roots don't look that bad, but I do need to get them. If I really, you can see the white under here, so I need to get them done today in the afternoon. And I've got to grade. Now I've got to focus on my university students grading papers, theses. The right way I'm doing. I make them do it in sections. I make them do their thesis statement first. Then I make them do I want an annotated bibliography. I want to know what sources they've chosen and why for their papers, because I'm trying to avoid let me just write down a bunch of stuff that I think and then slap 5 random sources on at the end, which is what a lot of students do now when they write papers. It's like an epidemic, and a lot of people let them get away with it, and I'm like, no, that's not how you're supposed to write a paper. If you're going to use the sources, if you're calling it your work cited, then that means you cited it somewhere, and half the time they don't cite anything, and I'm like, no, that's technically plagiarism. You have to, I don't care that you paraphrased it. You gotta at least say, show me where you got it from. You don't have to quote it all the time, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I could go on about that. So this morning I'm doing that. I'm kind of waiting to see if anybody else pops on. Probably people will pop on as we go on. Suda, good morning. So funny. I was just saying, I'll bet somebody else will pop in a minute. So good morning and welcome. Yeah, we are. I was just saying I had been out working outside yesterday, and now my arms are tired. But I do need to get back to working out and doing yoga again and stuff. Okay. So yeah, last night we had the Institute for Study of Feminine Myth with Max Orsini. I thought that was a great class. I thought he did a really good job. I think he thought he wasn't going to have enough to talk about, but I think we ran over time because it's just, because I think he said to me afterwards, he's like, wow, everybody's really like engaged. He's like, this is a really good group. Everybody just really, he was really impressed with how, it was wonderful. Yeah, it was impressed with how engaged everybody was. And next week I said, because I think he was just very, very nervous because he sees a lot of us, like myself, Joanna, Kate is more like Kate's an anthropologist, and Joanna and I are both humanities PhDs, and we both kind of we're kind of really versed in like mythology and things like that. And he's like, oh, well, that's not really my thing, and maybe I'm not going to fit in. I'm like, yeah, you're fine. The point is not for you to just regurgitate what we said. The point is for you to give your own point of view. And I always like the fact that even though I'm sure he's a guy with his own points of view, he's very, very open to saying, look, I know where to stay in my lane. I know I'm not, I'm not going to speak for women when I talk, and I'm going to, talk about what this is, and he's very good at that. So yeah, he really seemed to enjoy it too. So we just chatted briefly afterwards, and then I had gone to bed. But I always figure that's a very satisfying way to spend time. But so yeah, so today is interesting. I've been doing some work around my property, and I've moved some things around. Ran into one of my neighbors yesterday and was talking to him about, recent stuff going on. And I've also been, I feel like there's some people around here that that I've always been, okay, this kind of leads me into the topic today, and it's really interesting. I did a reading with these cards, the Between Worlds Oracle, the one with all the birds on it. This is great. I know the guy who, I'm trying to remember the full name of the guy who does this. Probably if I look in the booklet or something, it'll say. I know his name is Ryan, because I had to communicate. He's in South Jersey somewhere, and I had to communicate with him when the postal person inexplicably delivered the box with the deck to, even though it says 65, but my house. They delivered it over to an apartment complex on the other side of town. She's like, well, yeah, I saw the address, but for some reason, and it was something that had like a scan too, like where you had to scan that it was, tracking. And I was like, so anyway, so that's why I'm very well aware of the designer's name. And it was because I'm feeling like, and I think a lot of people are feeling this right now, that we're kind of in a space where some people may be feeling, and again, it may have to do with the collective, it may be on a personal level too, but there's things going on where people are feeling very hurt by people, where people are feeling like they want to establish boundaries with people, and yet at the same time, there's this call towards harmony and towards unity, okay? So when you start to feel, so when I start thinking about things and I'm thinking, this is something like where I've kind of had it, like I'm drawing the line in the sand, I'm done, that I feel like, well, that's being very divisive, isn't it? And really kind of the answer I got was, no, it's not. And so I happened to I had some thoughts, but I pulled some cards and I want to tell you about them. Okay, so 3 cards I had just gotten kind of pulled. The first one is called the Gardener, okay? The second one is called Growing Pains, okay? And the third one is called the Amorist. Okay, now in this deck, the Gardener and the Amorist I recognize right away as Taurus and Pisces, all right? And they're flanking this Growing Pains card. So if we think about what's going on in Taurus, and by the way, I keep saying there's a full moon in Capricorn. I don't know where the heck I'm getting that from. I heard that and somehow that got stuck in my head. It's a full moon in Taurus. That's the connection to Uranus, because Uranus is in Taurus right now. So there's a connection between this full moon, and Uranus, which is why it's so powerful. I don't know. So anyway, I've been saying that wrong, and sorry about that, but I just realized I was like, I don't know. I don't know what. Maybe it's because Pluto's exiting Capricorn that kind of got in the mix, and I don't know. Anyway, because I don't necessarily sit there and read the ephemeris every single day, So anyway, it's in Taurus. December 26th Capricorn moon, I think, or December 30th. I can't remember. Yeah, the one that's going to be. Is it the new moon? No, the new moon's in Sag. Never mind. Yeah, that makes sense, because then the other moon would be in Capricorn, because I think our new moon was in Aries, and then the full moon is in Taurus, and then I think it's going to be, the new moon at the beginning of December is going to be, I'm trying to remember, but I seem to remember that in early December there's going to be the new moon, and I think it's going to be in Sag, and then you're going to have the other one, in Capricorn. So I think I'm a moon ahead of myself, a full moon ahead of myself here. But, so the Gardener is Taurus energy. And so right now, like I said, Uranus is in Taurus. Taurus is going to be this full moon that's coming up. So I think that is significant. And then the Amorist is Pisces. And Pisces energy has to do with obviously Saturn's been in Pisces, Neptune's been in Pisces. And of course, it is also the last sign of the zodiac. And I've been seeing a whole lot around, like, I'll get, like, Judgment on the World and even the Death card and things, and then all of a sudden I'll get, like, a whole row of aces, and the Fool. So it's like, whoa, something's ending and something's beginning. I did have a dream last night, too, and I forgot to mention this. An odd dream that I was in a house with a bunch of people, and to be honest, I don't really remember what most of the people looked like in this house. I'm sure there was a mixture of men and women. But there was a particular man, an older man, and he kind of reminded me half of the guy who's in one of these stores in Califon. He's just one of the managers of these stores, and I've asked him for stuff. So, just knowing his face. And then half my neighbor, who's older, but older man. White, kind of white hair, kind of balding, that kind of vibe. And it was like we were putting away, I couldn't, like Halloween decorations and getting ready to decorate for like the Christmas or the winter holidays. And so, and it was interesting because I'm, obviously, okay, we've always had this thing, and people will have this, and I know this maybe feels very sexist to some people, but we all know this, the idea that when there's any physical labor to be done, you get the men because they have the better upper body strength, right? So it was like, there was like, okay, who's going to take these things down and who's going to take the boxes and put them away? And it was almost like, because I knew I was tired, and I was like, well, I can, if you want to take the boxes. And he said to me, you know what? He says, I hate to say this. He says, but I'm really, really tired. I'd appreciate it. I can take things down, but I'd appreciate it if you would bring the boxes. And I said, fine, fine, that works. Let's do it. And it was basically a fairly communal, and I feel like somebody new had entered the house. I don't remember anything about the person other than it wasn't a child. It was like a grown-up person, and I don't remember if they were male or female. But again, I don't feel like it was an unharmonious thing. So it was a very strange kind of a dream about decorating for holidays. But when I woke up, I thought about it. I said, I feel like the man there is kind of Saturnian energy, because he's the old man, right? And Saturn's often represented as time, as the older man. And so it's almost like, I'm tired. Can you, as the female here, can you pick this up? I was just going to say that, haha, wow, yep, that's the way I interpreted it. It was like, okay, will you pick this up? And the thing is, it's Halloween, which, is in, those of us who follow, like, kind of the pagan wheel, more or less, that's the end of the cycle, right? Samhain's the new year, but it's also the end of the cycle. Whereas, like, Yule season is kind of like the beginning of the light, right? So asking the woman to pick up the beginning of the light. When strictly speaking, it's like normally you would ask the man to pick up and show the strength. Here we're asking the woman to use her strength. So that I thought was really interesting. But the idea, Saturn is going to be stationing direct tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm going to do a little bit more of an astrological thing, because I figured for the full moon, that would be the time to do it rather than talking about it for ages in advance. But the Amarist is Pisces energy. And this has to do, so we've got the Taurus energy in the front, which is, kind of in this thing with Uranus. Yeah, it is interesting, yeah. And the Amarist is this Pisces energy. And Pisces is, it's very, it's the end. It's kind of the end of the thing. But it's interesting because you have this Uranus and Taurus. So to me, that's almost like the Uranus shock. You have growing pains in the middle, and then the Pisces energy, I feel like you have a kind of an ending. But it's interesting what the growing pains card says, because I looked it up in here, and I'll tell you what it says. Some breakthroughs have us walking through fire first. The work burns. The work hurts. Can you still listen to that which is soft and asking for an extra hand? Can you hold off on comparing your journey to that of others? When the bones ache, a massage can help. Yeah, we don't have Melissa on today. She's our resident massage therapist here. It's interesting. The work hurts. And that kind of gets back to what I was saying. The work hurts when we're in a space where things hurt. And I think also when we talk about Pisces energy, the word that he uses for this one is vulnerability. Okay? And we've been talking about that for ages. A lot of you I know because you've started out as Rahani clients, which is all about heart opening, right? And maybe not started out, but certainly, that's the kind of work I've been doing with a number of people who usually participate in this live stream. And Rahani, so how do you, okay, so if you're going to start setting boundaries with people, if you're going to start cutting people off at a time when we're supposed to be harmonious and you're supposed to be open, how do you reconcile that, right? How do we reconcile the idea that we should all just get along? And the reason is, what kind of came into my mind this morning when I was having my little Azrael chat that I do when I first get up, is that it's not, like, because I've said to him, I said, Rahani Credit let go of regret. Yes, I've been asking myself this for months. Yes, and what he said to me this morning was, because I said to him, I said, I'm feeling a lot of anger towards certain people, and I said, I almost feel like that's going against, and he said, no, you're not going against what we've asked you to do at all. He said, because part of the heart opening means you have to experience what you feel. If I was to stand there and go, well, I'm going to be a big person and I'm just going to be very positive towards, I'm not opening my heart. I'm putting up the barrier of saying I'm the better person than you. You know what I mean? Or that I'm somehow, and I understand, like, I know Joanne will frequently say when she's on that, what you put out is what you get back. And certainly, I mean, I completely agree with that generally speaking, the way that you project yourself to the world is what you attract. Okay, there's definitely a sense of that. But that said, a lot of times our fear of having negative emotions, I'm not allowed to have this negative emotion. I can't have this negative emotion. No, that'll make me a bad person. I have to look at this, I have to be positive. In other words, to look for the positive means I have to feel positive. And the answer is actually no. That's kind of the thing that seems paradoxical, but really isn't. It's the growing pains. It's the idea that in order to be vulnerable, you have to allow yourself to hurt. And so you have to allow yourself to feel that and to feel anger towards people. Because as I've said, you tend to feel, it's like something after a while, it's like if you had a canister of something that had something flammable and you lit, threw a match to it. Eventually the fire would go out when the flammable stuff gets used up. Okay? So it's almost like you have to let it burn so that it will go out eventually. Okay, so that feeling goes away. Saturn exalts in Libra, harmony, unity, balance. Once I get started on Saturn, I can shut up. Should have been a priestess of Saturn in this life. It's funny. Yeah. Well, Well, that's interesting. Yes, because yes, right. Exactly. That's true. And Saturn is There's this kind of energy of as we're releasing the old, as we're moving into this new space, as we're learning what's real, okay? And always when we talk about making new beginnings and learning what's real, sometimes what's real is not it's not a pleasant thing. We always like to think that the new thing is like opening up the birthday present that you want and like, wow, this is cool, we got this new thing. But a lot of times, sometimes the thing that we discover, it's kind of like going down to the basement and finding, I don't know, you've got like a family of snakes living down there or something. You just suddenly find like, crap, there's a problem here that I didn't think was here. Or maybe it's a problem you've been ignoring and now you can't ignore it. Okay? And I think we're feeling that way with people quite a lot lately. Again, for different reasons. I don't want to make everything about what's going on in the collective, because certainly there's a lot of that going on there too. But I know individually too, with just different people we know, we may be feeling that way as well. And I think our thing tends to be that if we are feeling negatively towards a person, or like we want to cut a person off, that makes us a bad person. See, you're being divisive. And it's like, no, you're actually not being divisive. You're honoring what your heart actually feels. And like I said, there could be a point at which that feeling goes away and it won't matter. You're gonna see that person and maybe not feel the hurt, or maybe you'll get over it, or maybe you'll say, wasn't that important, or whatever. I mean, but when we really start to feel that there are people and situations in our lives that are toxic for us, or that are just, even if they're not toxic, it could just be, but we've reached a point where we're like, okay, you know what, I've given enough, maybe I don't feel like this is an equal exchange, going back to the Libra thing that Sam mentions with Saturn, maybe I don't feel like there's an equal communication or an equal exchange here. I've heard my friend out, and it's never reciprocated, is what Suda's saying. Yes, she's referring to, I know you were talking about the situation, and, and that's another example. I mean, it's just like, there's times when you just kind of have to say, okay, you know what, I've done everything I can, and if the other person, people go through this in marriages all the time, it's like, okay, I've done everything I can to try to have this connection, to try to have this balance, and if you're just not going to have it, then I need to move on from it. I just need to move on from it. And know that, like the way I'm feeling, I'm feeling decidedly uncharitable towards a person right now. In fact, I was entertaining myself because I have a new nickname for them. I'm at the point when I'm too tired for angry, so I'm just done. Right. At some point, you just walk away. You just kind of go, all right, it's not worth revisiting. the more we revisit it, the more it still has a hold on our lives. And again, you revisit it until you're done revisiting it. I don't want to tell people like, you're upset about something. Like when people say to you, if you get very angry or upset, they go, oh, just get over it. Oh, it's not a big deal. Don't calm down. Don't stress yourself out. You ever say somebody, have you ever been really mad and somebody say to you, now calm down? Like, did you want to punch them in the face? Like, yeah, it's like, right. No anger, strangely. Well, right. Because you're past the point of anger with a lot of times with people. There might be bitterness. There might be a sense, or there just might be a sense of, what's feeding my soul right now? Because I think that's part of the gardener card. The gardener is like, what seeds are you planting? What's feeding your soul? What's feeding your life here? And if you have something, that's a weed, I mean, I don't want to compare people to weeds, but sometimes just the connections they're choking other things out. So you want to get them out. Full of metaphors this morning, aren't I? Exactly. What do I want? That's the question. Right. And what's healthy for me? A lot of times we hang on to connections with people because we feel, we feel a sense of obligation. If it's somebody, say, we've known for years, let's just say, it's somebody maybe you grew up with or went to school with or were best friends with as a child, or or they could be a family member who you feel like you need to have a connection to. And sometimes the answer is just like, no, it's better not to have the connection, Not everything grows when you have all of these other things choking other things out. You want to have some space to meet new people, to make new connections. And, it's not that you're necessarily wishing evil on the people who goes away. Or maybe you are. Let's be real. That's the other thing I think people need to be real about. We always want to say like, oh, well, But there's some people I'm just kind of like, you look at them and you're like, yeah, well, like if a large tree fell on your house or something, I probably wouldn't cry. The reality is that we do feel that way about people. And we try to pretend like, we always feel like we have to put the mask on of the better person. Like, oh, no, I would never, I'm very ethical. No, we would never want to actually do anything. But you have the thought, only sometimes in my sore spots. Well, again, especially those of us, it took having real friends to realize this. Yes, and that's the thing. When those of us, especially, who have a lot of Mars in our chart, or Mars in places that are not always convenient, like I have it in the 12th house. There's times when I feel like I need to, I feel certain things, but what happens is when you have anger and you just say, well, nope, I'm just gonna suck it up, smile, and not be angry. Or I'm just going to keep my anger to myself, and, because other people will think that, I'm the bad guy or I'm being the bad person. And that is very 12th house Mars, because Mars is like the anger that's hidden, the rage that's hidden. Although some people would argue that I don't always hide my rage when I'm annoyed about stuff. But I don't know. I don't think I'm rageful. I just think I just tend to be very direct with people. I'm like, okay, well, you want to do this? Well, then don't do that. Like at work, I was always kind of like that. And, if somebody wasn't, if I had an admin who wasn't doing what I needed done, I'd be like, well, I need you to do this today. I don't need you to do it next week. And they're like, oh, well, you're very direct. Yes, because I'm trying to tell you something. Do you want me to go, I don't know, I'm kind of hope you're not bothering me, kind of, sort of. Like the guy in the office who's just kind of like, yeah, if you do that, that'd be great. We can, I don't know. There's times when I feel like directness is a thing. So I don't know. I always feel like I'm pretty direct, but a lot of my Mars energy is there. And when we're trying to negotiate that Mars energy, it's like carrying a fire around, and it's like having to swallow that fire, yeah, right. It's like you have to swallow that fire, and then it burns the inside of you instead. You're the one who gets burnt, which is why they talk about forgiveness as being a release of anger. But the thing is, forgiveness is not something you can do until your heart feels ready for it. And if you're going to be vulnerable and you're going to be honest, as a lot of us who've done Rahani know, it's like you have to get out everything that's blocking it. And one of the blocks that we don't think about is the idea that, no, I need to be positive and a good person. So, and I'm ashamed of myself for feeling negatively. So, I just have to kind of withdraw and keep it in here. No, this is why, you don't want to do anything violent, because there's laws about that, right? And it's not necessarily the way to solve anything anyway, but But we have days where we feel, even if it's not anger, it could be a sadness, it could be a disappointment. It could be, especially if it's a connection that you really want to work. If you're like, well, our friend, if you had some aspect of a friendship or of a family relationship or something that really felt good, or that you miss or have nostalgia for, and you're kind of like, well, we haven't had that, or that's not what's happening, then sometimes it's just kind of like, okay. I mean, there's people sometimes we have to tolerate because we're in their presence. Like, people have to go to the office, and if they don't like somebody they work with, there's just like, all right, well, But you don't have to be friends with people in your office. You can just be polite, business-like, and just keep it at that. But yeah, sometimes it's just healthier to cut people off, because if you continually put yourself in the energy of people who do not wish you well, okay? Who do not wish you well, who think, and who, even if you have tried to be understanding of them, they have no interest in being understanding of you, then the answer after a while is just like, bugger off, It says, it's funny, I get along with people because I know how to navigate them. Well, yeah, and you know what? That's diplomacy. That's a skill. You get a sense of what people are like, and the more intuitive you are, too, the more your inner instinct kind of tells you about a person right off the bat. And, and again, we do get a sense of how we need to navigate people. Yes, because that, and I understand that too, because you try to understand too much diplomacy is exhausting. Well, that's right. Sam says, sometimes that's the only way to get peace and harmony is to let people go. Right. And I think a lot of times we feel like we see the devil card come up a lot. Speaking of Capricorn energy, right? There's that reluctance there's an attachment there that we are reluctant to let go of. Not necessarily because we're enjoying anything about the attachment, but that may also be why we're seeing a lot of nostalgia stuff too. Like, well, in the past, maybe it was this way. Okay, well, maybe it was that way in the past, and maybe now it's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, you've gone down separate roads, you've made different decisions in life, or you have different priorities, or you have different narratives. And if somebody has a narrative that where you just find you don't get support, or it feels very toxic, or it just feels like you're drained of your energy, then it's probably time to just walk away from it. In the same way we might walk away from other things that we do because they're just not, because after a while it's like, oh yeah, this made me feel good before. Now all it does is make me feel bad. Like, we would do that, like, okay, like if you ate a particular food all the time, right? Or something, and you really, really, really enjoyed it, and then you got to the point that every time you ate that food, it made you sick. Well, yeah, there was a time when you really enjoyed that food, but you might just decide, you know what, it's not worth feeling like crap, so I'm going to stop eating this. You know what I mean? Like, just by way, we do that with things in our lives. If this thing is now, if there's certain aspects of things that we have wanted or that we've been attached to in some way, when we find that we no longer helps us, then we let go of it, right? But we're reluctant to do that with people because there's like a guilt about it. Like, well, I have to feel guilty because, then I just look like I'm being closed off. But that's the irony, I think. That's the irony I think I'm trying to get to, is like, by doing that, you're not actually closing off. You're actually honoring what your heart actually feels. Okay? And that's, I think, what I'm trying to get to there. And that is something that I think in all of this, because a lot of people, when I have, especially with family, I'm dealing with this with all my in-laws. Yeah, and it can be in-law relationships. Gosh, I don't remember my in-laws, when I was married. But I just, there's sometimes there's just people. And this is why we establish boundaries, not because we understand that we exist in relationship to everything, which is what I was talking about yesterday. And the Watts thing that I put up the other day was about that. But I think also to keep an open heart, we need to, 100,000%. Yeah. In order to keep an open heart, we have to honor what's in our heart. And if our heart says, you know what, this person makes me sad. This person, every time I'm around them, I just feel small. I feel like I'm not valued. I feel like I'm dismissed. I feel like, then after a while you might be like, you know what? It's not like you're particularly doing anything bad to this person, but you're just kind of like, I don't need your energy. I just don't need it. And after a while, again, you get to that point, like you say, where you're not angry anymore, where you don't care. You finally reach a point where, because I think there's a grieving process that goes on. Even when we're just tired of a person and their crap, it's like, there's a grieving process that goes on, because you're saying, because that also, I think, is a thing too. We may feel like it's a failure of our ability to relate, right? We may think like, well, I'm a person normally who, like Suda had said before, like, I get along with people. I'm good at getting along with people, but I can't get along with this person. So it's almost like, why can't I get along with this person? And it's like, just simply because not everybody, it's like oil and water. They don't always mix, we don't always mix with everybody. And even if we mixed with them in the past, maybe we don't mix with them now. Now I know there's a certain point of integration, but because we talk a lot about that too, like with the temperance card and so forth, like integrating things that are opposite and that don't seem like they can work together. But I think this is a little bit different. It's not necessarily that someone's the opposite of us. It's just that whatever they're going through, whatever their stuff is, that they might be projecting onto you or projecting onto the world, or just how they're, like I said, whatever their narrative is about their place in the world. If you're just kind of like, no, and eventually if enough people pull away from that person, if that person develops any kind of introspection, they might think about their narrative. And on the other hand, probably in most cases, they don't. And it's like, okay, well then you do you, how you're going to do you. And, I don't need to be involved, right? I don't need to be involved. And these are the things too, because when we're especially when we're in a new space where our vulnerability also may be about how we still feel, when you're in a new space and you don't know exactly what you're doing and where you're going, there's a fragility there. You're fragile, and you might feel like when you have people who are toxic to your energy, it may be taking like the little plant and like pouring acid on it. You don't, I guess I'm full of metaphors today. It's unbelievable. And it's, but this is it. It's like it's like you don't want that. You want something, you need to be protective of it to a certain degree to let it grow, and that's just it. Where I think all of us are in this new space. We're moving into this new space, and a lot, and again, people here are, I think, actually everybody on this live stream, I'm sure people are doing the work, Love it. Keep the metaphors flowing. Yeah, that's, what was it? Was it Schopenhauer who said it? No, I don't think it was Schopenhauer. There's another, maybe, I don't know. Campbell mentions it in The Power of Myth. The best things can't be told, right? And second best things are things that, we kind of talk about, and then I forget what the third best things were. Third best things are, things that are secondhand or something like that. But the best things can't be talked about, and the only way you can talk about certain things is metaphorically, because otherwise they're just abstract concepts. That's the way that things are. But let's see what our reading says for today. But that occurred to me is that because I often will say that too when I'm working with people. Is when if they're very upset and angry and they say, well, I don't want to be negative. And I understand nobody wants to feel negative. I understand. But I'm like, well, don't turn it off because you think you need to be ashamed for feeling bad. Because you know what I mean? Then that kind of doubles the shame. It's like, okay, I feel bad, and now I feel bad about feeling bad. Now I feel like I'm bad for feeling bad. And so then eventually that starts to eat away at our self-worth. And it makes us doubt ourselves. So we have to be true to what our feelings are. And that's part of vulnerability, is to be true to what you actually feel. If you're ticked off, then you need to be ticked off. So let's see what our Osho Zenzek says today. And that's part of validation, too, which I was talking about the other day. We just have to allow ourselves. And again, thought and action are two different things. It's not an advocacy for people going out and, destroying people's property or being violent or anything like that. But that's also where I think creativity can come in. Where sometimes when people who write really, really horrible and horrific things about people, maybe they're just getting out feelings about people that their heart wants to express so that it doesn't have to be there. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's what I think the value is of some things that people just think are very offensive. But I'm like, yeah, but what else do we do with offensive feelings? Because they're part of who everybody is. We all have that. We're all in shadow. We all have the potential to be, very good, upstanding, ethical, good citizens, and we also have the potential to want to tear it all down. I mean, but that's just how it is. That's just how life is. And when we don't have any kind of an outlet for those feelings, or we have to feel like we're ashamed about that. Yes, I told my boyfriend to write a short story about all his worst thoughts about people who have harmed him. It might help. Yeah, exactly. And it's that's why I said I think I'm looking at all the stuff that I've written and published, but then I have all other kinds of things that I've been working on that I might never share, like I said, but writing them helps me work through making up these stories. And it kind of gets back to what Bruno Bettelheim had said about fairy tales, uses of enchantment. And again, that's more of a Freudian approach, but it does act, because for children, a lot of times Jungian approach is too much for a child, I think. Child's not ready to confront archetypes yet. They haven't established an identity. But they talk about how fairy tales and stories of things, which can be fantastical, that reading these stories with children, if a child psychologist does this, the child is able, because that's the mindset and the image set that they're in, they're still very much in that story kind of a thing, and they haven't been grounded in what we think of as real, right? So they're able to connect with feelings by identifying with the feelings of somebody in a story. And I think that's the value of doing it. I know some people don't like it and don't want to see it and don't want to look at it, but it's like, okay, but sometimes this is a mode of expression for people to talk about what really what ails them. It's a medicine, and sometimes other people being able to read other people's work, they go, yeah, I can identify with that. I mean, it's not pleasant, but otherwise, somebody was talking the other day about how you can. I think maybe it was Alex. Maybe you were talking about how people identify with the same thing over and over and over again, and maybe kind of, like I said, almost revel in a victimhood. But it's because I don't know, that's the other side of it, is that people can wear the wound as a kind of identity statement. So there's different ways that we could respond to that, but it's interesting. Okay, so our reading today is interesting because this is literally getting what I'm saying. The morality card's right in the center. Yep, the wound is who they are, right? And the question is whether or not you want to let the wound be who you are, or is the wound going to be who you are, or is it going to transform you? I think is the question there. And, but again, there's a process. There's a process where we may do all the things that people say, well, that's not nice. Morality, that's not nice, right? That's the cage and it's the cage that keeps the heart in. It's the cage over the heart that keeps us away from people, because we're hurt. Think about it like, okay, if you had a relationship, if you were really in love with somebody, you had a devastating breakup, and then you don't want to date ever again. Because, and you make all kinds of excuses for that, but that's because the heart's broken, right? Illuminating. I've been trying to put that into words. Yeah, it's like, you kind of have this thing of like, okay, now I'm too hurt, so now I have to put this in a little box. I mean, again, but part of protecting our feelings is being able to express them, because then it's like, okay, we're going to get the toxicity out. The inner feeling of which we're unaware is exactly what I just said, is the dream card. 6 of Cups. But the 6 of Cups is, this is the person, okay, we can look at this as a romantic thing, but you can put that aside for a moment. This is just the idea of this kind of perfect relationship, and we're wistfully looking at that that perfect relationship. We're looking at that perfect relationship, saying, or we're looking at the past. 6 of Cups is about nostalgia, right? Longing for a time, when maybe we had this relationship, or maybe this relationship was better. Again, it doesn't have to be a romantic one here. It could just be the connections that we have with people, and we still may be wistfully saying, well, maybe if I hang on to this connection, maybe I can get back to something like this. So as we're moving to Mercury retrograde, I think on the 26th, So it's like, yeah, we're doing a lot of revisiting, I think. And the external feeling, of which we're aware, is intensity. Okay, this is our. Trying to think. This is the Knight. This is the Knight of Wands. Okay, intensity, Mars energy, right? That's the intensity of our feelings, whatever those feelings are. Whether they're feelings of hurt, whether they're feelings of anger, whether they're just general feelings of sadness or bitterness or resentment, whatever it is, name all the negative emotions here. But when we feel them with an intensity, what we're not realizing, it's also the morality about how, because we had something in the past, we have to kind of, we're obliged somehow to accept it in the present. To take the burden on. Think about what Kate had said about Mexican women with their partners, about how the idea that the woman is supposed to always, be like the the one who suffers in silence, right? Like that is part of that feminine archetype that I call the Virgin archetype, or the Virgin Mary archetype, really, which is the one where you have to have this I'm just a little woman who's obedient and patiently bears everything. I think that's why it's like, no, you don't have to patiently bear everything. It's and sometimes it behooves you not to. It actually is worse for you to do that. And you don't, if it's a situation where there's children, you don't want to teach children that it's okay to accept certain kinds of behavior. I mean, it's okay to say, that you can't, that there's a certain way we interact in society. You can't just go beat up everybody you don't like, right? But at the same time, the idea that, well, yes, this person is being abusive to me, but, it's just, we just have to bear that. It's like, no, actually you don't. No, actually I don't. So yeah. And our advice card is the Five of Wands, totality. Okay. As we know, Five of Wands is very complicated because, in this deck, again, totality, being focused on the connections that are important, because this is focus on the important connection here, right? You're a trapeze artist. You want to focus on the person who's going to grab your hands, not the person who's going to let you drop, And this is also the card, as we know, Five of Wands is that competitiveness, that pettiness that we have, where we may feel that we're being judged or compared to others, is Five of Wands energy. Or there's, it also can have the playfulness of sport and things like that, but it could be a game that it's just kind of like, this is just a distracting game. You want to focus, right? And then our outcome is the Queen of Wands, which is sharing. So basically, yeah, we want to cultivate ourselves. We want to share our lives. But interestingly, in the name of unity, forcing ourselves to keep connections that are not healthy and that are not properly bringing about that abundance, that are not feeding who we are, what gifts we have, and giving your gifts to the people who want them, right? to the people who are interested in you, and who also are interested, who recognize your abundance, right? Who recognize what you share, And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the meaning here. We move from the Queen of, look at the difference here. We move from the Queen of Swords to the Queen of Wands, right? We move from morality, this very puritanical-looking woman with a closed heart, to this woman who's very, very open. You see she's got the light here. She's got, the cornucopia of that abundance. And that abundance comes when we focus our energy on the people, on the connections that matter. To be open and bohemian, right? Yeah. To be kind of, even just to be able to express who you are, whatever that is. Like people who look at you and say, yeah, I mean, you're a great person, and this is why. This is why I think you're a great person, I had a life coach once who did something that I really didn't like. And that was, she wanted me to have several people anonymously answer questions about me, about what they really admired about me, and then what they saw my flaws were. And then when I saw some of these come back, I was able by process of elimination to figure out who some people were. But some people were like, oh, well, she's just delusional. She thinks this, she thinks that, I mean, I admire her, but, she's totally delusional. Thinking that she can go off and do this thing on her own. Ouch. Why? Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, what? And I just thought, I mean, I don't know if she was just trying to say like, okay, I have an impression that I'm giving you, and maybe we want to see what other people's impressions are. But I just thought that's just really crappy. And knowing that I know who actually did it, I was like, that kind of ruined my relationship with that person, because I was like, oh, okay, so you're putting one face onto me, and then to other people you're going, oh God, she does this, and those are the people you don't want to be involved with, because those are the people who, smile to your face and undermine you behind your back. They're like the Seven of Swords people, they're the saboteurs. So, yeah. And I was like, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who think I'm delusional, because they're like, oh, well, you would give up a job that pays almost $100,000 a year to do what you really want. And I'm like, yeah. And there's people who say, well, that's stupid. But these, of course, are all people who think that their whole life is to be around, I have to make enough money and be the superstar of everything, and or make a lot of money. Otherwise, somehow I have no value. I'm like, well, actually, you're the one who I think has a problem. Nah, that's brave. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I was reading, I was seeing in my feed more from Dr. Martin Shaw. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a storyteller and a mythographer, folklorist. Lives in the south of England. He has what is it called? The West Country School of Myth, I think it's called, that he has. And at one time I had applied for a job there when I was living in the UK. He wanted to have the director of his Myth and the Poetic Imagination program. And apparently he got a ton of applications, but he only interviewed 3 people, and I was one of them. And now they couldn't hire me because, I didn't know if it was the kind of job, because it was an educational job, if I could potentially get a visa, and I don't think it was that type of a job. So that's why they picked somebody else. Well, maybe they had other reasons too, who knows, right? But I remember interviewing, so I got to sit kind of in a Zoom room with Martin Shaw, and he was looking at all the stuff I did, and he said, look, whatever happens with this job, he's like, please keep doing what you're doing. He's like, because this is incredibly brave. He's like, what you're doing is just, it takes a lot of, that's brave. He's like, people don't have the guts to do things like this. He's like, keep doing that, And I remember him saying that to me, and I just thought, wow, it was just, to hear Martin Shaw say that to you, was just like, because there's somebody who I really respect, in terms of his reputation and what he's also somebody who's trying to work with myth and work with narratives and help people, get to their core narratives. Yeah. So for him to say that to me, I was just like, that's the person whose opinion matters, Let's see if we can pull another one of these guys. Oop. You're gonna die laughing. Rage. We have the rage card that pulled up. And it's interesting too, because a lot of people like you guys were saying, well, you don't really feel the rage, but the rage could just be buried. You know what I mean? It's kind of it's interesting, but oh my God, yeah, right. All right, so let's read what this says. This is a bird sits in stillness amidst a roaring fire. Doesn't that remind you of that meme of that dog sitting there in hell going, this is fine? Yeah, it's in there somewhere for sure. Quiet rage. Yeah, it's buried somewhere. This card indicates deeply felt values that may have been violated or an anger yet to be addressed. This hot gnawing cannot last forever, and there is little to gain by staying in the heat. What keeps you? What hurt does this protect? It's time to fly off or use the flame as fuel for repairs. Oh, did I just say that? Yeah. Literally, you gotta let the fuel burn off. Letting the fuel burn off. It was a book I had read a long time ago called Kali Zodia, and it was about a tantric priest. I think he's now in California, but he was talking about his upbringing with a woman, with a mother and an auntie and a family that were kind of all involved with Tantra. And how he, like the idea, there were some really violent things in that book in the sense of, like when his best female childhood friend, when they grew up, she ended up getting bitten by a snake and she dies. And the way that they dispose of the body was kind of like, but they said you have to do that because you don't want to be attached to her. You don't want to be attached. You want to break the attachment to her. She's got to be free to do. You don't want to tie people down with your expectations of them. But I remember also in that book them talking about and I've talked to this about people. I've talked to people about this in coaching. The blooming karma. You know, it's like you could look at it like it's a flower too. It's going to bloom and bloom and bloom until the petals fall off. And so sometimes we just have to kind of be in it and let it bloom and bloom and bloom until the petals fall off. You know, so you know, probably fire is a better metaphor because we think of a flower as something, I don't know, something nice, something attractive, something not associated with rage, right? But it's that kind of a thing. Oh. Anyway, thanks guys for joining me today. You know, it's really interesting here. Ooh, we got Revolution at the bottom of the deck. Yeah, we are. I think there's a lot of pressure right now. I think people are angry, and it's like, okay, what are we going to do with that? You know, how are we going to? But I think the first thing you have to do is honor it and say, and not say like, oh, I should not be like that. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should. Thanks so much, ladies. Lovely to be with you all today. Yes, absolutely. So yeah. So with that happy advice, happy Thursday. I will be back with you guys tomorrow morning, and we will, you know, continue on with whatever comes up for me tomorrow morning. Oh, you're welcome. And, you know, and, yeah, like I said, everybody have a absolutely wonderful day. And, oh, Sam, I still might be reaching out to you, but I gotta get my act together over here. But anyway, have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.